Hi guys, it's Sharon. Hi guys, it's Sharon. Hi guys, it's Sharon. Back here with lesson number 2 in Unleash program to teach you guys how to train dogs. Hope that you guys are having a good week, that everybody's staying very healthy. We are here, we're in our backyard again, and still missing you guys, still waiting for the day that we can come back and do these classes in person. So you have had a chance to watch the first DVD that I sent in, or the first lesson that I sent in, and I just wanted to go over a couple things that we talked about. First of which is positive reinforcement, what that is, what that means in terms of training dogs, and how it relates to a dog having choice and force-free training. So positive reinforcement means that we are adding something pleasurable to the dog to have them do what we want them to do. And that something pleasurable can be anything that the dog finds reinforcing, anything that the dog likes. We talked about that in the first lesson. So when I'm training, I use a lot of food, I'll use toys, and I'll use something that I call personal play. And we'll talk more about that in the lesson coming up. But those are kind of the 3 types of reinforcers that you can use. You'll see me mostly using food, especially when I'm at an in-person class. It's just the most efficient way to get something to the dog quickly so that I can do more repetitions. We talked about this a little bit, I think. How long do you think it takes to train a dog to do a behavior? It can take a really long time, or it can take a really short time. Those of you that have worked with us before have seen that some things come quicker, some things come a lot slower. Sometimes we'll take 5 steps forward and 10 steps back, and sometimes we'll take a few steps forward and just 1 step back. It's not something that continues building upon each other. Sometimes you have to take a step back and do something a little bit easier than the last time and then move forward. Do we do the same thing every day? Do I practice the same thing every day? Not typically. Typically I give the dog a little bit of a rest or a day in between training particularly a new behavior, so that they have time to think about it. It's called latent learning, and it means that they're having some time to process it and think about it, and often that means that they come back stronger. If they don't, we'll take that step back to an earlier stage before moving forward. When do you think learning takes place with a dog? Is it only when I'm actively training them, or is it all the time? I'd argue that it's pretty much all the time. They're learning here to be waiting patiently for their turn to come out and play with me. They consider training play because I try very hard to make it fun for them. I know that sounds kind of funny that I try hard at making something fun, but I want them to really enjoy what we're doing, and that's all really what positive reinforcement is all about. If they're not having fun, if they're not enjoying the process, they're not going to learn very well. And so that's kind of what I mean about choice-based training. If I'm working with them and it's clear to me that whatever I'm doing is causing them some sort of distress or pain or discomfort, I'm going to stop and try to figure out what that is before I continue on with what I'm doing. And sometimes that means that I will stop for the day and think about it, and maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning it will come to me that whatever I was doing was causing them stress. Perhaps it is stepping into them too much when they don't like that pressure. So that's what I mean by choice. Does that mean that when we're training and they decide that they want to go off and say, go down the street, I'm going to let them do that? No, of course that's not what it means. It just means that if something is causing them some sort of stress, I'm going to stop. How would I know if it's causing them stress? Well, while I'm training, I'm carefully watching my dogs. And what do you think I mean by that? what I mean by it is I'm looking at them and I'm looking at their faces, their bodies, their butts, because they don't have tails, so I can't really see if their tail's wagging and in what direction. And just in general, what shape their bodies are taking. If their ears are pinned back against their head, as opposed to forward like they're falling now, both of them. Lucy's aren't so good, but Oscar's are, just the way Lucy's fall normally. If the ears change setting, if they perk up or if they go back, I'm gonna want to look at that and try to quickly figure out why they're going back. They may come up because they hear something strange, particularly when I'm working at home. If they hear somebody in the front yard, they hear somebody in my back, on the back side of my wall, they may perk up. That's different than if they go back in sort of a fear or a discomfort mode. If their bodies are arched, if they are backing away from me when I'm trying to work with them, I'm going to pay attention to that to try to figure out why they're doing that. And those of you that have worked with me have seen some of that behavior occasionally when we're working. And what do we usually do when that happens? We usually just switch gears. We change what we're working on. Sometimes they just get tired of working on what we're working on, and that is a form of distress, and we want to make sure that they have as little distress as possible. We can't eliminate it entirely, but we can do our very best to make sure that they don't have a whole lot of distress. We want it to be fun. We want it to be pleasurable. We want them to enjoy working with us. The more they enjoy, the better they learn. In terms of how long I work on any one behavior, we talked about this in the first lesson. It really isn't very long, 2-4 minutes, sometimes 5 or 6, but usually not longer than that. Anything longer than that, and I'm going to start to see some signs of distress typically. We want them to be short, quick bursts of fun. Okay, some housekeeping issues. It's really hard for me to teach because I don't know what you guys are thinking or how you're feeling about what I'm doing. So I'm going to ask you to write down any questions you have and give them to one of the guards so that they can give them to Officer Alfaro, who will get those questions to me so that I can answer them in a DVD later on. I also want you to write down any feedback you have. If there's something that I'm doing that you're not enjoying or don't like very much, or if there's something you'd like me to be adding to these lessons, write it down, hand it to one of the guards who will make sure that Officer Alfaro gets it, and I will see if I can incorporate it into a lesson that's coming up. I want you to be able to have some say in how these lessons go. You would if it were in person, so I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to have a conversation even though I'm not there in person. Okay. So this is the really nitty-gritty of training a dog. This is really, really important stuff. It's important when you're working with your own dog, and it'll be very important if you ever go into working with other people's dogs. How can you stay safe, excuse me, when you're working with dogs? And when you're working with your own dog, you start to get a feel for what you can do and can't do with your own dog and be safe. And every dog likes things differently, just like we all like different things. Some people like people very close to them when they're talking, and other people need more space between them and the person that they're talking to. Same thing with dogs. So when it's your own dog, you start to observe that, and you sort of just do it because you realize it. But when you're working with a brand new dog or you're working with a client's dog, it's really important to observe the dog, look at the dog, not approach too quickly or too close to begin with, to make sure that you stay safe. Dogs can and do bite, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to any of us. So we kind of have this thing that I call the 4 C's, and it's really important. When you approach a new dog, or any dog, I'm going to get one of my dogs here. When you're approaching a dog, I want you to approach with your body kind of curved. I don't want you to come straight on like this. Do you see what's happening? She's even backing up from me. Come here, Luke. Good girl. Good girl. So you kind of want to approach backing into a dog with your body kind of curved without staring them in the eye. You never want to stare at a dog in the eye. You want them to have an out when you're first approaching them. So she's not really comfortable with me that close to her. So I would come in and be a good girl, a little bit further away from her the next time I approached her. Now, that's the first C, is your body's kind of curved. My body doesn't curve a whole lot, but you can see kind of what I mean there. Then there's 3 spots on a dog that seem to be the most safe spots to start touching them. That is their chest, right there, their cheeks, or their chin. Okay, let me do that again. Good girl. See if you can see it there. Good girl. Sit. The chest, she likes that. The cheeks, or the chin. Good girl. Very nice. That's your 4 C's. Curving your body, their chest, cheeks, or chin. That's the safest way to approach a dog. Sit. Good. Oscar's bubble, personal bubble, is a lot smaller than Lucy's. He doesn't mind people up close to him. So see how I'm kind of curved into him, touching his chest, his cheeks, his cheek, or his chin. That would be how I would approach a dog to begin with. I would not go straight on. Oscar doesn't mind me in his bubble, but Oscar's been with me for a very long time. I would not reach over the top of a dog. Oscar doesn't generally like that. I might approach here, and I might even start on their sides or their chin. Okay, come on. It's one of the very important ways that we stay safe when we're working with dogs. Now, something that's really important to keep in mind is, what do we do if a dog's doing something that really bothers us? Say they're licking us and we don't like it, they're jumping on us and we don't like it. How do we prevent that from happening? There's a couple of ways that we can do it. One is what I call an incompatible behavior. And what that means is that we're asking them to do something other than the jumping on us. So something that they couldn't do while they were jumping. Let me see if I can get one of them to do it. So say I'm working with a dog, and he's doing that, and I don't want him to do that. One of the things I could do is toss food. He can't jump on me if he's going and chasing food. I could toss a toy. I could say sit and ask him to do something that he knows that he's not able to do while he's jumping on me or licking me. It's really important that that's how we handle that, as opposed to pushing them away, kicking them, using our knees. Those are things that we wouldn't want to do. We could turn our back on them, a little bit more aversive for the dog, not quite as pleasant for the dog, but it's something that we certainly can do. Now, good boy. In. Lucy, in. Good girl. Sorry about that, guys. So that's something that we really would have to keep in mind when we're working, especially with other people's dogs. And you will be working with other people's dogs when we come back and visit, because you'll be working at least with my dogs and hopefully some other dogs in the future. How to give the food. So if some of you have already worked with my dogs, I apologize if this is repetitive, but it is extremely important how we give a treat. You go come out. Okay, so Oscar has what I call a very gentle mouth. I can put my hand right up to his mouth. Lucy does not have a gentle mouth. Sit. And so I have to be a lot more careful. I have to be very flat-handed, which means that with Lucy, my hand's more like that. With Oscar, I can hand it to him between my fingers. So the safest thing to do when you've never worked with a dog before, and if the person doesn't tell you this because they may not realize it, is you always give food flat-handed until you figure out what you can and can't do. And I would say for your purposes, flat-handed is always going to be the safest choice. I'd also like to talk about how long you would pet a dog. Normally, I wouldn't pet a dog for more than about 30 seconds, especially when I was first working with a dog, because I want to give them an out. They may not like it, but they may not want to get away, and sometimes that builds some frustration in them that we don't want to build. So I would never pet for more than 30 seconds, and probably a whole lot less than that to begin with. Okay, back here. So the last thing, safety-wise, that I really need to talk about is how we make sure that we're responsible dog owners or dog trainers. Off. Good. See, that was an incompatible behavior. I didn't want him jumping on me. I didn't ask for it. He's jumping because he thinks we're going for a walk because he sees his collar and his leash. So in order to be a responsible dog owner, you need to have a few things on hand. You need a collar. I'm going to put Oscar's collar back on him. Snap it on. He has tags that have his emergency information on them. You need a leash. You need poop bags, which I actually don't have any samples of in my pocket because I am in my backyard. You need some treats. You need food and water. And they always have water. I don't know if you can see the water bucket in their X-Pen there. Even in my backyard, I provide them with water. And you need to have a good leash. This is really important if you're going to take them off of your property, and that means if you're going to take them to the vet, you need to have a leash. So I have a leash here. It's a short leash. I like shorter leashes. I don't like long leashes. And I'm going to clip it on to his collar because I want to show you the safest way to hold a leash. So even though the leash has this loop at the end, that's not the safest way to hold it, particularly if you're like that. What happens if the dog pulls and you're holding like this? They're going to drag you, particularly if it's a big, strong dog. Now, Oscar's not that big, but he could actually pull me off my feet if he saw something that he really wanted to get to, and I would go down with him. So what we do is we take this and we fold it like that, and then back like that, and I hold it like this, so that if he pulls, all I have to do is let go. And I'm not being pulled down the street with him. Show you that again. We fold it and fold it again and then just hold it. You could also just fold it in half and hold it like this. We don't want to hold a tight leash because dogs like to pull when the leash is tight. So you could just fold it in half and hold it. That way, if he were to pull, I would just drop it, and he would be able to leave me without hurting me. There is no point in having both of us hurt, because then I won't be able to attend to him. And if he's pulling me, we're both likely to get hurt. So that's a really important thing. All right, so if action. Let's get to some dog training in our last couple minutes of this lesson. So what do you think are some of the most important behaviors that we need to train dogs? And do you think every dog needs to learn the same behaviors? I'd argue that not every dog needs to learn all of the same behaviors, but I do think that every pet dog needs to have a couple of behaviors that they know. I think that everybody's house is different, and so everybody's going to want different things out of their dog. I do think that everybody's going to want a dog that is going to come when called, which I call a recall, and is going to respond to their name. Now, if we're working with dogs that are not our own and we don't know their name, or we don't know what their name might be, say if we're working with shelter dogs, we might not use this name game. But if we're working with known dogs, we would use a name game. And there's variations on the name game that we can do for dogs that we don't know their names or what their names are actually going to be. But for pet dogs that we know, we're going to work on a name game, and we're going to work on recalls. Those are probably two really important things that they respond to, right? When I ask my dog to come to me, I want them to come to me. And why might that be really important? Can you think of any ways? Think about it for a second or two. I'm going to want my dog to be able to come to me. Particularly, I work in my front yard a lot with them not on leash, to keep them away from somebody who's walking down the street, or another dog that's walking down the street, or a cat that's on the street, or a squirrel, which they both happen to like very much. So for me, it's really important that they come. I also have coyotes that come in my yard, and so I'm going to want to be able to call them away from a coyote if I let them out and I see the coyote in my yard. And I have done that before, but I work really hard on making sure that their recall is a good, strong recall. So what I would do with a brand new dog is I'd first start teaching their name game, because that's part of the recall. And I'll show you how I would start that. So I would take 5 or 6 treats. I think I have 5 here. Good boy. I'd have him in one hand, and I'd say, Oscar. And as soon as he looks at me, and I'm not sure if you can see it, so he's looking at my hand because that's where the treats are. Oscar. Yes. I'd say yes, and I'd give him a treat. Oscar. Yes. See how he's looking up at me? Oscar. Oscar. Yes. That was pretty close. He almost didn't. Oscar. Yes. Good boy. Very nice. Super job. Super. And that's the name game. It's very easy. And I would do that a couple times a day with a brand new dog. I would want the response to be much more immediate than Oscar was showing. And for a dog who's 9 years old, who's done this game many times, he didn't do particularly well at it, which tells me that it's something that I need to continue working on with him. He was so focused on the treats in my hand. Now, one other way I could have done it is kept the treats in my pocket, and he would have been probably more likely to be listening to me and focusing on my eyes. Let me show it to you with Lucy. Oscar, no dog. Oscar, get in there. Oscar, no, Lucy. Lucy, good girl. Very nice. Okay, ready? Good girl. Come here. Oh! I know. Sit. Lucy. Lucy, yes. Okay, so she's focused on the one in my hand. So I'm going to put it in my pocket and see if that makes a difference. Good girl. I didn't have to say her name that time, but I really do. Lucy, yes. Let's see if I can get you to see what she's doing. Lucy, yes. One more. Lucy, good. Now that time she was already looking at me when I said her name, but I still said it, and I still gave her a treat because I want her to associate looking at me with her name. Good girl. Let me show you another game. And once we became pretty comfortable at this and the dog became really good at giving me eye contact with their name, the next thing I would probably add is what I call a recall, and that means to come to me when I call you. And I would start the recall with this game, which is called the treat toss game. I would take about 10 treats, and I would take one, and I would toss it. Lucy, come! Yes! Good girl. I'd give her a treat for coming to me. So I would toss the treat to get her to go away from me, and as soon as she starts to turn around, I would say, Lucy, her name, and then come. And as soon as she gets to me, I would say yes, which is my marker word, which tells her she's done something right, and then I would give her a treat. So, and we'll talk more about marker words and the order of them in the next upcoming lessons. Ready? Lucy, come! Yes! Good girl. And when I'm starting it, I'm going to say yes when she's just coming to me. But because she knows this game, I'm going to give it to her until she gets closer to me before I say it. Ready? Lucy, come! Yes! Good girl. So I want her to come all the way into me. Lucy, come. Yes, good girl. Very nice, little one. Very nice. Lucy in. Good girl. I'll show you with Oscar. Oscar, come. Yeah. Good boy. Oscar, come. Good. Good boy. Oscar, come. Yes. See? And that's really easy, and it's something that's quite easy to do and fun to do with the dogs, and they really enjoy it. And they'll start to understand that when I say their name and say come, that means that they should be coming to me. Okay, I went a little bit over time today. I'm trying to keep it at about 20 minutes, so I want to close up with what we would do normally in an in-person class. Oscar, good boy. Sorry guys. In an in-person class, what I would ask you to do is I would ask you to tell me one good thing that somebody else in class did and one good thing that you did or something that you're proud of today. If you're sitting in a group with other people and there is something that somebody else in the group has done that you think is really good, actually, even if you don't think it's really good, let's start that over, okay guys? If you're sitting in a group and there's something that somebody else has done that you think is good, I want you to tell them that you think what they did was good. However, if you're not comfortable doing that, and I can understand that, I want you to really think about one thing that you really liked about today's lesson and why, and then one thing that you've done today that you're particularly proud of. And I'd really like you to start writing these down on a daily basis. I think I mentioned it in the first class, and I'm going to mention it in every class. I want you to take a couple minutes every day and think about something that you've done today that makes you feel good about yourself. And it can be something really small, like I brushed my teeth today. Or it can be something bigger, and it can be anything that you're happy about, really anything. And I want you to write it down every day. And I want you to kind of keep a journal, an ongoing list of those things that you've done that make you feel proud of yourself. And if you could write down one thing that you think was good about today's class, that you enjoyed, one thing that you learned in today's class, that would be really helpful too. And if you want to share those with me at some point, I'd be really happy to look at those. In any event, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the DVD. I hope that you enjoyed it. We will see you really soon. I'm going to try to get you a DVD every week, but because I'm mailing them, it may take a little bit longer sometimes to get them in, but I will keep this up on a regular basis throughout this COVID-19 quarantine, and we will see you really soon, guys. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy. We miss you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. GoPro, stop recording.